And we're back. Hey, everybody's up. It's me, Oh Dear, and yeah, you're on the O review, but welcome back to a whole new episode of the Oh Dear podcast. This is your host, Oh Dear, and let's just say we're in the summer movie season right now. It's July, and I feel like, now we can actually get hyped for some of the biggest things coming out. And one of our biggest franchises are coming back this Wednesday, and they're surprisingly able to make it big with a splash on Wednesday other than a Friday of all weeks. So let's give it to, no, not Marvel Studios. Their time is coming by the end of the month. Let's talk about Despicable Me. And yes, I'm using this as a way to talk about certain franchises where I grew up with the franchise, but I feel like instead of me coming onto the podcast and talking about news or just little certain things, stories, I could actually say, oh, I could do a video on this rather than waste a couple minutes and actually not hear people know my opinions on it. But let's go back to a whole new thing, a whole new format. And the Oh Dear podcast is exclusively for franchises and movie talk. So that's going to be a big staple of the changes right there. But with Despicable Me, I feel like that's a thing where I didn't even know it was going to release on a Wednesday of all days. I thought it was going to release on Friday because I'm like 4th of July and all that. But it's weird that to say that I'm like, okay, we've come this far with this being the 4th main movie and actually being the 6th installment of a franchise. I feel like let's go back to the beginning and actually talk about these movies. Not only for the fact that, okay, they're big and popular between families, but I grew up with it at an age where franchises like this didn't always often exist. Okay, they were actual movie studios that had franchises, but not as big a caliber as this one, because I feel like something about it made it so successful, and I'm like, how could it? Because I don't think it was when it came out until everybody got on the hype train whenever they released a new movie, because I remember back around 2009, I'm assuming, yeah, around 2009, I went to go, and it's a little bit of story time, you're going to learn something from me at the time too. Around 2009, I'm going to the movies. I tell my mom, I tell my dad, hey, they're releasing Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2 in theaters in 3D. That whole 3D double feature that had a sneak peek or a trailer for Toy Story 3. And I was like, okay, let's go watch it. And it was turned into a whole day where my mom, dad, aunt, uncle, me, my bro, my cousins, we all went to go watch it. And right before the trailers, there was like a little thing where like, okay, put on your 3D glasses. And right when it started, okay, I got my trailer for Toy Story 3. All right, I got that. I'm excited for it when it comes out next year. But after that was this certain trailer for a certain movie. I was like, this is not DreamWorks or Disney. What is this? And that changed my whole perception on what exactly was not only new to animation, because I know animation in the past has had its own certain sets of genres, but with me specifically, I feel like animation was a thing where it's made for kids. Animation is just for kids, and I was around 8 years old when the first trailer for Despicable Me released, and at the time I'm like 8-year old and thinking, okay, so animation is just for kids. There's not going to be any adult animation. I know it's not allowed because we're come to a staple where, okay, all this is basically for us, and I don't think it's going to be any issues whenever a big studio tries to put something out like this, because I remember when Family Guy was on the PSP, me thinking it's a kid's cartoon, I'm like, okay, 2D, that can be for kids and for adults, but I feel like now looking at this whole new perspective of animation in the world, there's a lot today, I guess today, in current day, it's not surprising. I mean, we just had Sausage Party, and we're about to have a sequel coming out in July. But something in me felt something the first time they released a teaser trailer or anything related to Despicable Me.
I got the pyramid in my hand.
Justin, you get back here right now!
No, stop! Not cross the line. No! Wait. Hold on. Easy, little boy. Okay, stop, child. Stop right there. So. No. Oh, there he goes.
I've got him!
Outrage in Egypt tonight as it was discovered that the Great Pyramid of Giza had been stolen and replaced by a giant inflatable replica. There is panic throughout the globe as countries and citizens try to protect their beloved landmarks. Who could be responsible for this despicable crime? And where will he strike next?
Despicable Me.
I love it.
I'm having a bad day. If you take it personal, that's okay. Watch, this is so fun to see. Oh, Despicable Me.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, when I first saw that on the big screen in 3D, I was like, oh, what is this? This feels a bit more different than my thing. And that fucking theme, like, the Despicable Me theme is more Pharrell Williams doing a song, but I'm like, the first time hearing that, I'm like, somehow this feels kind of hard. Like, this shit is like, damn, I'm having a bad day. If you wanna, that's okay. Watch, this is so much to see. Oh, Despicable Me. Bro, I don't know. As a kid, that felt kind of like, yeah, that's hard. That's kind of cool. And I was still young enough to not know how to use the internet that much. And I only saw things in the form of trailers. And it was like, I never Googled Despicable Me by any chance. I was like, okay, I'll look at the trailer, and let's say sooner or later this movie comes out, and I'll just look for the title on YouTube and just look for trailer. And weirdly enough, I saw 2 other trailers between 2 different movies, and I'm thinking, oh, so this is what this movie is sort of about. Where the first time I saw it, the second trailer that showed Gru off introducing Gru, and that he's a villain, and he's trying to steal something from Vector, who is the world's #1 villain. So, okay, I saw that before Megamind when I first watched it, and I'm thinking, okay, so this is what this movie's about. It's almost like Spy, and it looked a bit ridiculous with the animation. I'm like, oh, it looks edgy, but it's a bit more comedic. Like, I don't know, something about it felt a bit too, like, oh, they're not taking themselves seriously on this, and this is some actual comedy instead of what was shown before, and they still played the theme. The third trailer, and weirdly enough, I remember this really. It's funny when you're like, okay, past memories come back to you the first time you were introduced to something. But it was around when Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel, came out, and there was a couple trailers that came on before it, and until this one that was like using 2001's A Space Odyssey as like the main theme, and they're like, the world needs a villain, and a villain has minions. And the first time I've seen a minion on the big screen, I was like, what the hell is this? And it was that little teaser where the minion, at the time, they were just nameless. They were just like, oh, these are just yellow characters. Like, what the hell are they? And they showed off them just switching the little cow thing and the one that just moo upside down, and them just laughing, and the tall minion punches him, and they just slapstick. He grabs the little container, and it's like, Despicable Me coming next summer. And I'm thinking, wait, what? That's that movie? Like, really? Until I'm like, okay, so they really doing this. What are I don't know if these yellow things are supposed to be like aliens, or are they the bad guys? And these two villains are gonna have to team up or something like that, because 8-year-old mind, I don't know how this works. And I'm like, okay, I'm actually theorizing, what is this movie really gonna be about? And it wasn't up until everything cleared itself out, because I'm gonna come back to this little thing later, but yeah, the first time I actually saw the trailer for Despicable Me and saw what this movie really is, I'm like, I feel like this is something new, nobody above my age is gonna handle, but let's see how this looks. And I found out with the final trailer.
Freeze red! Freeze right! Freeze right!
For Groove, being a supervillain isn't easy.
We stole the Statue of Liberty, the small one from Las Vegas.
He has to control
Listen up, please.
an army of minions.
Dave?
He has to outsmart a ruthless archenemy.
Shrink Ray? No! Oh, I hate that guy.
And he's about to inherit
Hello?
3 small problems.
You will not cry, or sneeze, or burp, or fart. No annoying sounds.
Does this count as annoying?
Fire now!
From Universal Pictures,
We are going to pull off the true crime of the century. We are going to steal the moon!
and Chris Meledandri, executive producer of Ice Age and Horton Hears a Who.
I shrink the moon. I grab the moon. I sit on the toilet. What?
You're funny.
Go!
By the time I'm done with Groot, he's gonna be begging for mercy. Go! We have to warn him, and fast!
This summer, just because he's a bad guy doesn't mean he's a bad guy.
3 little kittens started to yawn.
Now make them drink the milk.
Wow, this is garbage. You actually like this?
Despicable Me in eye-popping 3D.
He's so fluffy, I'm gonna die.
All you gotta do is knock down that spaceship there. Oh, somebody's got a frowny face.
Okay, my turn. Knocked over!
It's so fluffy!
Despicable Me.
And yeah, that really told me a lot. I'm like, okay, this is a comedy. This is a full-on cartoon at this point. And when I went to go see it, I saw it and I thought, this has the meanings of being something different and something good. Because Illumination, it's their first actual film that they introduced the studio with, and what actually made it Illumination is the fact that they used the Minions in all the marketing. Everything with the Minions worked, and they're like, okay, they're little side characters, but when I watch the movie's about Groot, once known, not really supervillain, trying to be the best and trying to steal the moon. And once he gets Margot, Edith, and Agnes, the girls in his life, it's like, yeah, I want to pursue my goals, but I feel like, what if I really don't want to do this and I can actually just be a father to these kids? And not only that, I'm like, okay, that's something I never, I don't know. Something about this is like not on the norm with me, because I'm like, okay, hero, villain, I gotta do this because it's cool. Almost all my action heroes and almost everything I've idolized as a kid, I'm like, yeah, they gotta be the toughest, they gotta be action, they gotta be all this and that. But looking at this, I'm like, he has feelings for these kids. That's crazy. He's a bad guy, but it's like, what if all bad guys aren't just bad guys, it's just that they're misunderstood? Not misunderstood, but it's like, he never really wanted to do this, and it's something he's always felt like he had the passion to do, but hasn't done it yet. Which is funny, because throughout the movies, you sort of see the bit of backstory with Groot, but seeing it as like, oh, he wanted to just go to the moon, see the moon, and actually have it in his hands. And it's like, wow, this feels cool, but then what after? Because he's not really a villain. He has the minions, but throughout the movies it's going to be a little bit inconsistent looking back at the previous ones, because the first one as a starting point is a good movie in general, but it's not like I'll come back to revisit it once in a while because I'm like, yeah, it's the introduction, but something about looking back at the trailers is that the animation looks a bit more 2010 like. Like, I feel like Illumination with their movies now, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of money put into these. But something I really learned is that at the beginning, Illumination didn't even have too much money to begin with, because Chris Meledandri, who worked at Blue Sky, started this, and he specifically said that we're going to be producing cheap stuff, but at least it's going to be more small-scaled animation compared to the big things like at Disney, because a Disney movie would be around hundreds of millions of dollars, while a basic Illumination movie is still in the second-digit numbers with their millions. And I found that impressive. I'm like, oh, okay. And surely enough, they did make a lot of money out of it. They made about $500 million. And I'm like, oh, so everybody likes this sort of thing. Everybody likes this franchise. And I'm like, okay, Illumination didn't do a sequel till around 2013. Their next film was Hop. But Illumination and all their movies, I'm not going to talk about it as much as I am. I'm still going to stick onto this. But I feel like when the sequel, the second one, came out, I felt like the lead up was a bit more, let's say, quieter compared to the first time, because I remember one time in the theater they do that little, it was before Frankenweenie, that they did a little thing before the intros where I'm like, we didn't get teasers for teasers like we do today, because I know that everybody's doing that whole 15-second teaser to the actual teaser coming on this certain day. But no, it was just little clips in the movie theater where, okay, we're going to be showing off new movies, and we kind of did see the posters outside the wall, so I'm like, we know it's coming. But in this day and age, we had little intros that I'm like, okay, a sequel is coming. Almost like when they do an announcement at Comic-Con. But, yeah, later on than usual, I think around, I think it was before, I'm trying to remember because it's hard to whenever, oh yeah, around 1010. Around when 1010 came out. Damn, they should make a sequel to that, and they still haven't done it. But, getting back to track. Around when 1010 came out, they released an actual full-on trailer for Despicable Me 2, and I'm like, okay, let's see how this one goes.
Night, Edith. Good night, Margo. Whoa, hold the horses. Who are you texting?
My friend Avery.
Avery. Avery. Is it a girl's name or a boy's name?
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter unless it's a boy.
I know what makes you a boy.
Who you do?
Your bald head.
Oh, yes.
Sometimes I stare at it and imagine a little chick popping out. Beep, beep, beep.
Good night, Agnes. Never get older.
Mr. Gru, Agent Lucy Wilde of the Anti-Villain League. You're gonna have to come with me.
Oh, sorry.
You know, you really should announce your weapons after you fire them. For example, lipstick taser! Get in there!
Now this looks like on top of me, so everybody just follow me, cause we need a little controversy, cause it feels so empty without me.
Anti-Villain League, dedicated to fighting crime on a global scale. A new villain has surfaced. You know how a villain thinks. That's why we brought you here.
Pins and needles.
I am the League's director, Silas Ramsbottom.
Bottom.
Hilarious.
Are you really gonna save the world?
That's right, baby. Gru's back in the game with cool cars, gadgets,
How are they working?
and weapons.
And when the second one hit, that movie, compared to the first one, I'm like, it loses a bit of heart from the first movie. And in this one, they went for a bit more of a comedic tone. And this movie, I felt like, out of all the movies, I could say personally, the second one is my favorite out of all of them. But I'm like, wow, this one actually hit good. There's a lot of new stuff. Seeing Gru as a family man and almost going from super villain to sort of hero with the introduction of the anti-villain league. Because I'm like, okay, they're going to make a second one, but is he still going to be like, who is he going to be fighting? Because I feel like, yeah, he's a villain, but there's no like actual heroes. And I'm like, he's a changed man. Nothing is going to bring him back to the life. And it's not until this organization introduced the anti-villain league is a way to actually stop villains. Or should I say they're basically the industry that fights villains, which is basically James Bond, but not really James Bond. But you know what I'm thinking about this. So whenever they introduce that, I'm like, okay, that's a cool dynamic. Seeing Gru, a reformed villain, going back to actually stopping villains he might know, or there's some villains in the past that he doesn't even realize are villains today. But yeah, the second one was really good. There was a lot of good stuff, comedic timing, and the minions too. Because looking back on all these, in the first movie, the minions were marketed, but not exactly were they actual leads in the movie. Because if you could name any minion in the first movie, you're like, who would you think of? Dave. Because I'm like, that's the only one they pointed out, and that's what I thought the Two Eyes minions were called. And I'm like, okay, I like that one. That's my favorite, and his name is Dave. But in the second movie, they gave a lot more personality to the minions. They were in scenes with Gru, and they were actually, quote unquote, their title name as minions doing their thing. There was a bit of slapstick once in a while, but at least you saw that they weren't just dumb. Because I remember when the first one came out and my dad watched it with me, he was like, yo, this is so dumb. Those characters make no sense. It's just some stupidez estos días. I'm like, I mean, I know they're supposed to be like that, but it's like, it's just a kids movie, right? You don't got to go that deep into it. I know there's certain Pixar and DreamWorks things you like, but yeah, it's not your speed. I get it. And I get it with a lot of people too, because that's what a lot of people saw the Minions as, and they thought, oh, this is just going to be dumb. But no, in the second movie, a lot of Minions had a bit of spotlight and a bit of moments too, because we had a lot more characters other than Dave, like Carl, Stuart, Kevin. I swear there's a lot of Minions. I'm like, I feel like they're just basic names, and I feel like if I can just say it, it's funny because I'm just saying random names. But one of the Minions actually has one of those names, which is, just like people. But yeah, the Minions were actually done really well in the second one, including the fact that this, and I previously mentioned it, all these trailers in common have a way of telling you what the movie is gonna be, rather than say give off plot or details about what the movie is gonna lead up to, because with every trailer there was a new piece of story. The first movie introduced it with, oh, the pyramid is gone, then introducing Gru, then introducing the Minions, and now seeing it in full animation in its full format, you're seeing all those stories blend into what it is. The second one kind of didn't do that. We just had like two trailers, like one showing that the Minions are disappearing, and the one I just showed off right now with the Anti-Villain League. We didn't know who the villain was, what was going to be going on, until later that summer when all the promotional things started going on. Because McDonald's did their little toy thing, and you saw that some of the Minions were coming out purple, wearing and black leotards, and they're like, what does that mean? Are they like new Minions? Or are they evil Minions? And they were too. I'm like, oh, them purple things were evil, and I'm like, huh, they're still like the Minions, not threatening, but it's like, huh, they actually got their full-on versions of evil Minions in this. Okay, that's kind of cool. And with the second movie, the villain, he's not as big as Vector, because Vector was like iconic doing his thing. It was just some old villain people thought were dead, but it's like, oh, we can rule the world together, and most of the villains are idolizing Groot because he actually stole the moon. A villain who actually did their thing, and it's like, oh, they're building up to, okay, exploring more of the world, because you're seeing, okay, there are actual super villains out here. And it's not just Gru and Vector that are the only ones. There are other people inspired by their work. And with this, I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool to see. But with most of the movie itself, it was more in the lines of a comedic James Bond-ish style movie, because all the weapons, all the tools, And yes, there was a lot of modern day things with the weapons and some little comedic jokes with Gru doing his thing with the agency, seeing that okay, he likes Lucy, and the fact that Lucy's changing him to be more of a better person, and once he doesn't have her in his life, is like, damn, depressed. And it's true, because I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to see him evolve, since Gru went from just adopting 3 girls to now he's like a single dad, and he's like, he needs that other half of his life. And it showed a bit of flashbacks with Gru, seeing that he was just a nervous kid, everybody didn't like him as much, and he felt like he couldn't find any connections with anybody until the day he meets Lucy. So I'm like, okay, I saw that from the beginning. They get together, and yeah, the second one, I feel like it's a worthy sequel compared to the first. And I thought, okay, this is gonna be Despicable Me now, a family movie, literally a family movie. And I'm like, all right. Then the credits roll, and we got something compared to the first movie where you see the minions doing gags. But no, it was a way of saying, oh, we already got a third movie, but it's not going to be a third movie. We're getting a Minions movie. I was like, oh, a movie with the Minions? Like, just Minions itself? And they announced that, yeah, it's a Minions movie coming out. And it's a prequel movie to Despicable Me. And I'm thinking, prequel? Okay, because I feel like animation has done this a couple times where certain times they do prequels to iconic movies, it ends up working, and it sometimes doesn't, because I remember the last time they tried doing that was Monsters University, and it was a good movie, but the thing is that, okay, I like Monsters Inc., but the prequel, I know is not going to be as good as the first one, but I'm like, damn, that movie was actually good, and a worthy successor to Monsters University. But then again, there are other times where they try to do a prequel thing, and it doesn't work. Like, damn, I can't remember it exactly. The first Puss in Boots, I'm gonna be honest. As iconic as that character is, it's cool, but me seeing that he's doing all this stuff now, it's like, why couldn't this been its own thing and not Shrek related? Because I feel like if they were to introduce that character as a character exists, and this is after Shrek, that's cool, but this being like a prequel to Shrek and how he ends up meeting Shrek is like, okay, so he did all this, but then when you see him in the actual movies, it's like, I don't know, it's a bit confusing and it's weird. Like, I don't see it like that's that same character. I know it's voiced by the same guy, but I'm not looking at that character and seeing all the things he does in these movies and like, yeah, you're the same exact character I'm seeing you in Shrek. But yeah, I'm like, okay, let's see how this Minions movie is gonna feel like. And oddly enough, I thought it was gonna be weird. I'm like, okay, we got our first trailer introducing the minions that they've been on Earth for years. They've entire purpose is to serve villains, and I'm like, oh, they're going through our history. And we didn't get too much, except, okay, there's an introduction, and this is years before Gru, and we're actually introducing 3 new minions to the group. Kevin, Stuart, and Bob. That's all I know. And once in the story format trailer mode, they actually released a second trailer that showed off a bit more of what the plot is, and what type of world we're actually living in the world of Despicable Me.
No, Kevin, me le due, aspetta. No, me le due, aspetta. Baccalo.
Oh, Walter, look! These adorable little freaks are headed to Orlando, too.
You're going to VillainCon, aren't you?
VillainCon! I'm gonna get all my favorite villains to sign my magazine. Scarlet Overkill! If I was a minion, that's who I'd want to work for.
Welcome to VillainCon, the biggest gathering of criminals anywhere.
Any evil talents?
Not bad.
What about you? Any evil talents?
Hello! La 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 la! Eh?
That's not evil or a talent.
Ladies and gentlemen, the supervillain we've all been waiting for, Scarlet Overkill!
Doesn't it feel so good to be bad?
Work for me, and all your dreams come true.
Respect. Power.
Banana!
Banana.
Wow, these cats are pumped.
Maybe I'll settle them down with a bedtime story.
Bedtime buddy?
Once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs. The pigs encountered a big, bad wolf who hired the 3 pigs to come work for her. One day, the pigs did something very stupid. So the wolf huffed and puffed, and she blew them off the face of the earth! The end.
And that was our time. The Minions were getting a spin-off, and compared to the first 2, I'm like, okay, we're gonna get a spin-off, and hopefully this ends up working. But months in preparation, this movie was like everywhere known to man, from bottle caps to stores to actual food organizations switching it up to the Minions and everything, promotional art. I was like, yo, this movie's gonna be big as hell, but I don't know if it's gonna be like the thing where everybody's like, okay, everybody's milking it with these characters. Because I feel like whenever a big animated franchise does a thing with a certain character, they feel like, okay, we can spin off the comedic character and do its own thing, and let's see if people like it. And I'm like, okay, the Minions, that's one thing. Doing it like this, where you're just giving them their own movie, knowing that they're gonna have to incorporate this back to the first one, I'm like, okay, let's see how this one goes. And when I saw it, I'm like, moderately, it's not as good as the Despicable Me 1 or 2, but I feel like this has its own way of separating itself from these two and making it its own thing and its own franchise. Because I'm like, the Minions themselves, they're funny characters, and in this movie specifically, mainly because I feel like we had to focus on 3 specific ones with different looks and personalities. With Kevin Stewart and Bob, I'm like, okay, they're a good trio. And I feel like if I look at them in the other movies, I'm thinking, where are they? Because I feel like if you're going to actually have main Minion characters, have them be the main leads for your next couple movies, since I'm like, okay, you introduced them in this. So the next time we probably see them in a Despicable Me 3 or 4, coincidentally, we're going to actually have them involved. And I like them as leads. The 3 of them, even though they didn't speak proper, like, actual human-sounding words, they were nice enough. And I feel like my favorite out of the trio was Bob. It was a new Minion design, because they had, like, the short, fat Minions, but there was a shorter, like, I feel like this version was a bit more younger than they expected, because I'm like, I feel like they wanted to do that, because in the credits for the last movie, you see one of the fat, short Minions in that Bob design. And same thing with Bob, that he has that mutant gene thingy. I don't know what it's called, but they talked about it in X-Men, where one of his eyes is different than the other, that one is brown and the other one's green. I was like, oh, so that's kind of weird, but I'm like, that's a nice detail that they made him uniquely different. But same thing with this. With the villains, I feel like out of all the villains in the movies, these have probably like the best villains overall, not only in the sense of their comedic tone, the way they are, but also the voices behind it, because Sandra Bullock played Scarlet Overkill. I'm like, okay, we're going to be flipping the table. Instead of a guy villain, it's going to be a female villain. And I'm like, okay, she's comedic, she's hell-bent on ruling the earth and stuff like that. And everybody idolizes her just like I thought. I'm like, oh, so villains have their own little secret organization within this world, basically like spies. And I'm like, okay, it's cool that they have their own thing. And not only her, but the first time I'm seeing John Hamm do a comedic thing, I was like, I know, I saw that that's his name in the voice, but I'm like, this ain't Don Draper. This is somebody else I haven't seen. And he was the funniest part of the whole movie. He was besides the Minions doing their shtick, he was the best part of that movie, and he was the best comedic one. I was like, damn, this dude's so cool. It's like, he comes off like a hippie, but I'm like, damn. As the husband, I gotta admit, he was the funniest part. But my thing is that with this movie specifically, it's not only that the Minions are like more the leads, and I feel like this is their story now compared to Despicable Me, because I feel like this movie makes them out to be this important, where I feel like it's gonna be like rewatchability with this one. I'm like, it's cool seeing them in their own way, like a spin-off doing their own thing, but I feel like it could have worked a bit if they at least mentioned that the minions are actually this ancient and actually hell-bent on doing stuff, because this showed a bit more of the backstory with the minions, and I feel like, yeah, we're getting an introduction to their motives and why they are the way they are, but hopefully in a Despicable Me something, they get to do something big and not just be like the little side characters, because I know they did that in the first movie, and they brought a bit more of it, expanded it with the second one. And in this, I feel like, okay, now we know what the minions are, what they're capable of. So hopefully when we see them next time in a sequel, and oddly enough, the movie actually showed off a bit more with Gru as a kid, because we saw a bit of that in the second movie where you saw Gru nervous, and it was like, oh, I was always wanting to be a supervillain. And you see him like, oh, as a kid that people didn't like him as much. So he's like, okay, so that must have been one of the reasons to lead him down this path. And we saw a young kid Gru design. And in Minions, the scene where you see all the minions go over to meet Scarlet and they're walking past some booths, you see in the background Dr. Nefario using the freeze ray gun and actual young Gru with his mom and looking at him use it, and he turns around and sees the minions. And that comes full circle at the very end where, yeah, the minions, I didn't even get to talk about the plot, but I don't feel like that's more important right now. It's more giving off my inner thoughts. At the very end of this movie where all the minions actually come towards England, help Kevin Stewart and Bob with their signal, and Bob, Kevin and Stewart actually they're being honored for bringing back the Queen's crown. Scarlet has one last chance to take it, and is frozen with Gru, and is frozen with her husband by Gru with the freeze ray, and you see the minions go for Gru, and this is like, and this is how the minions met their new boss. He was so evil, so despicable. Then roll credits, and you're seeing a little jokey gag like in the first movie with Gru and the minions doing evil things, or at least testing little things with each other. Seeing, oh, this is going to be the relationship, and now this is how we're going to see going back into the next movie. That when we go into Minions, then watching Despicable Me 1, we know that they had a relationship and they're all buddies. It's not like, oh, they're just hirees, and now we're seeing more of their personalities. And I found it nice. I'm like, okay, not as good as the first one, but at least not as good as the... Oh, man, I might as well just say it. Minions, if I were to rank them, Minions is like the spinoff that should have been its own thing. But I feel like now that we already see them as Despicable Me movies at this point, I'm like, it's not as good as the second one, but at least it's a bit better than the first one. And 2 years after that, we get an announcement of a third Despicable Me movie where I'm like, okay, now we got a trilogy, a spinoff, and oddly enough, I feel like they're not going to milk this one as much, because I feel like around 2017 we were at that point where franchises, kids things aren't like as big as they used to, so I'm like, okay, it's been a couple of years, and I feel like at the time the Marvel franchise and certain studios were out doing their own thing. Disney brought back their animations with Zootopia, Moana, and they were getting ready to introduce a new thing. I can't remember if it was either man, I can't remember the movie, but I feel like there was a lot of stuff going around with Disney. I know that Pixar released Cars 3, but I'm like, the people aren't going to be into it like that. But with Despicable Me, hopefully everybody likes it. And I feel like with a bit of more improvements in technology, Illumination got really clearer with their animation style. Like, Despicable Me 1, 2, and 3. The first one, it was a bit cheaper. The second one, in the Minions movie, their animation style was a bit more linked in tone. In comparison, I'm like, if you showed me a shot from the Minions and a shot from Despicable Me 2, I feel like, okay, I can't tell which is which, but I know they're different movies and they have the same style. But with Despicable Me 3, it got a bit more higher up in quality, and their animation looked a bit more cleaner than it did in the first two.
Whoa! Illumination!
How could you let Balthazar Bratz just get away? You're fired!
He's really good to snuggle with.
Agnes, what are you doing?
Since you don't have a job, I just wanted to help.
Excuse me.
Hey, could you?
Oh, of course. Now, as I was saying,
Goodbye.
Ow. Ow.
Seriously?
Ow. I really must have a word with you. On behalf of your twin brother, Drew.
What? Twin brother?
Twin brother? Big brother?
I can't wait to meet my brother! Dude.
What's the difference between me and you?
Who doesn't love this guy? Look at him! Oh, but hair would make you better. Look at his face! Oh, he's so mad.
What's the difference between me and you?
You must be the beautiful wife.
Oh, stop it. Sweet talker. This place is amazing.
It's nice, I guess, sure. I'm not really into things.
What's the difference between me and you? About 5 bank accounts.
Face it, Gru. Villainy is in your blood.
C'est gros con boobs.
You ready to continue the family tradition? You and me? No, I left that life behind me. Just one heist.
What's the difference between me and you? You talk a good one, but you don't do what you're supposed to do. I know what I'm feeling every day with it.
I'm going in. I'm gonna be failed. I'm okay.
What's the difference between me and you?
This does not mean that we are going back to being villains.
Luca. Bueno. Pignouf. Bueno. Pignouf. Bueno. Pignouf. Nous les pignoufs.
Despicable Me 3, on the other hand, something about this one specifically, I'm like, it wasn't as good as compared to the first three. I feel like, I don't know if it's that 3 trilogy number itis. I think, I don't even know what it's called, because I know it's, I don't know if a certain term is used for a third part in a movie series, where sequelitis is what I know as when people copy most of the beats in the first movie and use it in this one, and they just use it to call it a sequel. But with this, I feel like, okay, in Despicable Me 3, I don't know what was wrong with this specifically. I like this one least out of all the movies, but I feel like there was a lot of things that was going on for it in this movie where we had the basic plot, which was Balthazar Brat, one of the old villains from the past, coming back to today's world, like, oh, the world neglected him, so he's the biggest new supervillain. And what I saw is that, okay, we're going to be dealing with this. On the other hand, we're going to see Gru reconnect with his twin brother, which, that was the big headline for this movie in the poster. I was like, oh, so Gru has a twin brother. I wonder how that's going to be. That is also voiced by him, but where Steve Carell, instead of doing his accent Gru voice, uses his regular voice. So I'm like, okay, I've seen you do voice work before and it sounds good. But with this, I'm like, okay, let me see how it's going to be, because I know it's going to be over-exaggerated, more like a Michael Scott. And I liked it for what it was. And I'm like, okay, but that's going to be the thing, right? We just got these main two villains reconnecting. Okay, we're going to see Gru fall back into villainy again. Okay, we're going to see that. And it wasn't just that, because almost every character for some reason in this movie had a side plot where we had the main villain, Balthazar Brat, doing his thing, Gru and his brother doing their thing, the minions retaliating from Gru from not wanting to go back to villainy, hearing that he has a twin brother. That's going on, and they're in jail. Then on the other hand, you have Lucy doing her thing with Margot, where you're gonna have to deal with her trying to see that she could be a good mom to the girls, because I don't know why, for some reason they didn't set that up in the last movie, that they had a bad relationship. But also the fact that Agnes, the youngest daughter, is looking for a unicorn, and I'm like, there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie, and there's like 3 main things I feel like should be at play here. A lot of storylines made this one a bit more complicated, and I'm like, you could have zigged, but you zagged. There's a lot of those moments in this third one, but I feel like some of the main things I actually like about it is actually Balthazar Brat, which he's voiced by Trey Parker of South Park, and throughout the movie, he's doing a lot of 80s references and digs, because I feel like it's Stranger Things' fault for this, that when that came back in 2016, it brought back the 80s trend for some reason. I feel like I was always like, I knew it was around, I liked it, but for some reason, this is the main demographic right now at this point in our movie era and entertainment. I was like, okay, I'm gonna let that be, but at least I grew up with it. I'm not these posers trying to be like, oh, okay, I'm trying to do this because it's popular. No. He was the best part of the movie, and funny enough, he's my favorite. I keep saying this about these movies. Like, each villain has their own thing, but I don't know. Scarlet Overkill and Balthazar Brat are like my two main favorite villains out of the franchise. And Trey Parker doing his whole Randy Marsh shtick when he's talking, even doing the when he did the Michael Jackson. That little stupid ass Shamon in the South Park voice. I'm like, I feel like they did that on purpose knowing this. But yeah, the third one I wasn't as fond of. I'm like, okay, the first ones were good. I'm like, just because this one wasn't hopefully they could try to do better with the next one. And oddly enough, the second one wasn't even a sequel. It actually turned out to be a Minions sequel, which I'm like, oh, the Minions are getting another movie? And I feel like I should have known that, but I feel like I didn't, because I felt like around 2018, I feel like they announced it to Despicable Me 4, me thinking, okay, we're going to get a sequel. We're going to be going forward, but I'm like, I don't remember them announcing a second Minions. And if it did, where would it be? Because I feel like there's nothing else. Like the story is there. Like the story going from Minions to Despicable Me, I feel like it's all set up and done, as explained in the credits. But no, we were actually going to get a new Minion story with actual Kid Gru as the lead. So I'm like, oh, we're doing this now. Okay.
Welcome to the Vicious Six.
Hello? Everybody here for the interview? Me too. What do you drive? I got a jet bike.
They're ready to see you, Mr. Gru.
Oh, good. Great. Here we go. Distinguished villains, my name is Gru. I feel like I'm talking too loud, even though our proximity doesn't require this kind of volume.
You seriously think a puny little child can be a villain?
Yes, I am pretty despicable. You don't want to cross me?
Come back when you've done something evil to impress me. He took the stone! There's that little thief! Go, go, go! Cuidado! Cuidado!
Otto, take the stone back to the lair. I'll distract them.
I'll handle this.
This is the biggest day of my life. This kid just stole something from the worst villains in the world.
Time to strike!
Now I will be a super villain. Now all I need is Otto. Where is Otto?
Sí. Punya poso para ti la pata.
Are you pulling on my legs right now? Otto, where's the stone?
Big storia. Porca le tondruf, quando le pari mene. Il maco, vai chi berghe. La papitoirelle. Oh no, la partida, la bola. Basta, il amico, dure fotostopa. Baciu, la ghetta. Papagato, parenti. E là, la punella. Oh là là, le pelo bellissimo. La chiruto. Topissimo, no?
Did you just trade my future for a pet rock?
See?
Oh, I didn't mean to scare you. Now, where's Gru?
This movie, on the other hand, I don't know what to say, but it's kind of funny that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this one was the next one. Because I remember 2020, I don't know, some big event happened. Don't know. Oh yeah, the Super Bowl. That's what it was. So Super Bowl Sunday, they had all these trailers lined up. I'm like, okay, we got a Fast trailer, we got a this trailer, we got a Black Widow trailer, okay. And the first trailer for Minions, when they announced it, was like, here they are, here they come, the minions. I'm like, oh, this is what we're getting now? That's kind of cool. We're getting a mini Gru in this. We're still going to see a little bit of that dynamic, but now let's see what it's going to be like in the past. And this one took place in the 70s and slowly introduced the little bits that actually lead into the first movie, because Gru is still in his style of villainy. He's doing his own thing. He's not one of the big leagues just yet. He wants to be a supervillain. And it's funny enough that I don't know what it was, but I feel like the what was it called? The coronavirus. It took me. See, that's how bad. I'm like, damn. I cleared it out of my head. The coronavirus actually did a thing where the movie theaters were shut down, and people had to delay their movies. I'm like, okay, they could just release it on digital. And Illumination Universal said they can do that, but hell no, we're not. I'm thinking, okay, so this movie's got to be big if y'all really keeping it to the shoulders like this. And they were. This movie was like so it's not like a serious Despicable Me movie. I'd say it's more of a Minions style movie. Like I said, that the Minions feels like it's more its own thing compared to Despicable Me, because you grew in the family dynamic, while these movies are just here to we're just here to have fun, and that's gonna be that. But yeah, when this one, it's a bit more of a retro 70s, let's say, genre film, because they do a lot in this movie. They have kung fu, powers, comedic tones, actual adventure with villains. I'm like, all these villains are archetypes of certain characters, and I dig it. And each of them had their own style and quality. Even the fact that the minions themselves, Kevin Stewart and Bob, they were the main focus again, and I'm like, okay, see, this is what I wanted to see in the other movies, but I feel like it's just going to be these movies where we see the minions in charge doing their own thing, because those three have a good dynamic, and more of the stylings of the first movie actually incorporated itself in here, because we're seeing Gru do similar things like in the first Despicable Me, and I'm like, okay, we're going to get a Minions sequel, and so I feel like everything here that's it, right? Like, I don't know if they're going to continue this, because I wasn't sure if Despicable Me bombed. I know that out of all their Illumination films, that Despicable Me is the one that actually kept them going and going after every movie, because I didn't even mention this, and I feel like I might as well end this now, that ended it with this, that the first movie made $500 million. Despicable Me 2 made almost $1 billion with 980 something million. Minions itself, oh my god, that one I was like, okay, the way you're describing it, that these movies are just family films and they're not gonna mean anything, but I don't know, it's not like, I wouldn't say Minions, the spin-off itself, made over $1.1 billion, and thinking, whoa, so this is a super franchise now that everybody is not just gonna watch it just because of the title name itself, but I'm like, whoa, y'all really made this go over. And Despicable Me 3 did not so bad itself, making over $1 billion. And what did what did Minions: The Rise of Gru make after waiting for a pandemic? They made about $940 million waiting, rather than all the movies that put themselves on streaming at the time, because I feel like, I don't know if it was the wait or that everybody loves these movies. And on the other hand, I can kind of say that TikTok, I don't even know if it's a bad thing, but I feel like TikTok is used in the wrong reasons, because I feel like the movie experience isn't as good knowing TikTok's around, because everybody's looking through that app, scrolling and seeing the scenes. But with that movie, everybody did trends, everybody wore suits to the theater. When I went to go watch it, I'm like, people aren't going to be that serious for it. At my local AMC, people in suits. I'm like, yo, are they fucking for real with this? It's a kids movie. And they were. Everybody was hyped out for it. I'm like, the Minions and Despicable Me franchise, okay, they're unstoppable for right now, because they released at 2021, and Illumination didn't make another movie till 2023. Their big comeback when they did the Super Mario Bros. Movie. And Migration, which I'm talking about this on the side because it is kind of a lead up. That they actually released a little short film starring Vector on the moon trying to get back to Earth, and hopefully enough, I don't even know if the next one is going to answer this, because the short ends with the Vector failing many times, and the floating minion that was in space, he gets saved by some fellow minion. He's like, do you want to help him? Not really sure. Then Vector flies off the moon, and lands on Mars and is stuck on Mars now, which I'm like, okay, so that's the last time we're going to see him, right? And who knows? All will be told this Wednesday when Despicable Me 4 releases. And I feel like, yeah, this is going to be a big Superstella franchise. And I feel like I'm counting $1 billion on this movie because as of right now, no other movie has made the $1 billion club just yet. Inside Out 2, maybe, because it's looking for it right now because I'm seeing it like around 800 something. And Disney is not thinking about putting it on streaming for some reason like every other studio. But I feel like, okay, we're going to see it hit $1 billion, but let's see what happens now with this movie that comes out on Wednesday. I know not a lot of people are going that Wednesday. That Thursday is 4th of July. Everybody's out of school. Some people aren't even at work. And I know that movie theaters are going to be stand-packed with people just waiting in line to go see it because this is going to be the big thing to open up the summer. We haven't had that just yet with any other movie because I know we had Planet of the Apes. That did all right. Fall Guy should have been the biggest hit. Wasn't the biggest hit, and it ended up going on streaming around 2 weeks after release. But June, out of all months, I'm like, okay, we had A Quiet Place just cap off June. It made a lot of money, but I'm not thinking like that's the big open box office. Oh, you got to go to the movies right now for this type of opening. Because, yeah, movies have been lacking lately, and I don't know what it is with the movie theaters these days. That's a certain topic I'm talking about in another video. But for right now, to end out the Despicable Me movies, yeah, that's my experience with those movies. It's a franchise I feel like it's grown up with me because I feel like this is like not the thing my parents grew up with because I know their whole style was Disney and DreamWorks, the way they grew up with their stuff and animations. And you got to remember, not all studios are going to be the same thing. Some new studio who might not be the biggest or the best come out and still perform well with their movies besides somebody else because no idea is a bad idea. It's more about how you explore the concept and world you're trying to bring to these people and actually show off what kind of universe you want people to live in and what type of characters you want people to actually be in love with the moment they walk out that theater. Because I'm going to be honest, those Minions became iconic before the movie came out and everybody was looking at them looking like banana, doing all that type of stuff. And I feel like this Wednesday, we'll see if that trend continues here on the O Review. And I guess that's all for today. Thank you guys for listening. If you've grew up with the Despicable Me franchise, let me know what you guys think about it right now because I grew up with it right when I was 8 and I'm 22 right now and this franchise is still going. And I feel like it's the longest form of story, I wouldn't say story, that I'm surprised it made it this long after 14 years. But yeah, this is a animated movie franchise I feel like has surpassed its time. But I feel like with every movie that people are still interested in and people still love it. So we'll see how everything turns out this Wednesday with Despicable Me 4. And I guess that's all for today. Thank you guys for listening. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already to the O Review YouTube channel. And I'll be sure to come back next time with another franchise, which I can't mention it right here because this is a kid's franchise. It's more on the adult side, and we all know about that type of franchise, I feel like. It's A24, but most of us know it for different reasons. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.